And post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, affects millions of Americans, but many people may not even realize they are experiencing it. From subtle behavioral changes to more intense emotional responses, the signs can often go unnoticed. Dr. Stephanie Johnson is a licensed clinical psychologist and trauma expert, and she's here to talk about it. Good morning, Dr. Johnson.
Good morning, Ken. Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you on. So, first, for folks who may not have heard the term before, what is PTSD and how common is it in the US?
Uh, PTSD, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. It affects about 5% of the general population. And basically, if you break it down, it is the inability to turn off your fight, flight, or freeze response.
So, if we think about in terms of people who've, let's take the extremes, people who've been in the military, if they've seen combat, they've seen a bomb explode next to them, they may suffer from that for years, or somebody in a plane crash who survived, or a big car accident. Those are some extreme examples, right, of some impact that might live on in people's minds. But there are lesser examples as well, aren't there?
There are. So I get a lot of clients that come in that say, well, I never went to war, or I never had this happen or that happen, but car accidents, you name it. It doesn't have to be a major war event. It doesn't have to be a sexual trauma that most people would think PTSD. There are other incidents that can actually cause our central nervous system to get stuck into that fight, flight, or freeze.
How about like even the death of a loved one, someone close to you who
Mhm.
just passes away? I know somebody who tells me more often than not, when they go to sleep, they've awakened with bad dreams, thinking of that moment. So would that be an example of PTSD?
It very well could be. It depends on how that loved one passed away.
Mhm.
If it was traumatic for them, maybe like a hospital scenario where watching them go through that process can definitely be very traumatic.
So, what are some of the early warning signs that somebody may have PTSD but may not recognize it and maybe should call somebody to talk to about it?
Well, one of the first signs is avoidance. And that happens gradually. People start to avoid people, places, things. They start to avoid thoughts and emotions about specific events. Then they tend to become hypervigilant. So they're looking for danger constantly in their environment. So let's go back to the losing a loved one, say in the hospital. Now they're going to be even more focused as, oh my gosh, now I have to go get myself checked out all the time. They're always maybe looking for signs or symptoms of something that they may have in common with their loved ones. Do I have cancer? Do I have this? Always getting checked. Then we have the negative thoughts and cognitions. So thinking that the world is a dangerous place, depression. And I think this tends to happen when people's central nervous systems have been stuck in that fight, flight, or freeze for so long that it just becomes exhausting. And so then our thought processes and all that just go right along with that. And it does. It starts to affect not only our relationships, but our internal state as well.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about when somebody actually gets triggered. What might that look like in the moment? Could it lead to a full-fledged panic attack? What usually happens at that moment?
It's case by case, and it's dependent upon the individual. So again, panic attacks are very common. I work a lot with first responders, and they're
Mm.
surprised that their central nervous system gets stuck into that fight, flight, or freeze, and so they will start to have more panic attacks, high blood pressure. Panic attacks are common. Let's see. A trigger could also just be somebody shutting down. So shutting down emotionally, isolating, withdrawing, not being able to emotionally handle situations. And so they just remove themselves from social
Yeah.
environments.
I mean, I've seen my dad was a police officer, and he used to do something like that when he would come home if he had a very challenging situation. He never wanted to talk about it, and I think they internalize a lot of first responders internalize things, and they don't want to discuss it. How does PTSD affect relationships then with friends, family, and coworkers?
It affects relationships greatly. And you nailed it. So some people internalize. So those people that internalize tend to have the health complications. So again, they're not releasing it or letting it out. They're not talking about it, unfortunately. And I think a lot of our first responders do need to come home. They need to talk about it with their wives, their spouses, whatever to get it out. Because if you don't, internalizing the trauma causes high blood pressure, it causes inflammatory responses. So now you're having your body's storing all of that emotion. How are you going to get it out, right? Then we have those that
Hmm.
externalize, right? So externalize, they're very vocal. So this could be arguments, not being able to resolve conflicts very well, using alcohol, substances, trying to actually cope, because alcohol and drugs they are a coping skill. They're just a maladaptive coping skill. So we have the two different approaches, internalization and externalization. You nailed it. Exactly.
Yeah, we had tens of thousands of people come back from the Vietnam War drug addicted from what they saw, right? And they
Mm-hmm.
had the heroin, not heroin, excuse me, morphine that they had in their kits to help in the event of an emergency, and they all got addicted to it after witnessing some of the worst, disastrous, disgusting, horrible things. And they came back. We had tens of thousands of Americans, literally, who then ended up living in the streets, drug addicted and homeless because of that. Perfect example, doctor. And by the way, just want to digress for a second. Why is it the stigma still remains in our society that if you are having an emotional challenge, that just man up? What is the deal about people who still don't accept the reality that if you have the flu, you go to the doctor. If you have a broken arm, you go to the doctor. And if you're having an emotional challenge, you go to the doctor. Why do people still say, oh, just suck it up? Why don't they get it?
I do see a change in that. I think ever since COVID, which there were some positives with the pandemic where more people were breaking through that stigma of mental health and actually seeking mental health treatment. So we are starting to see that stigma slowly go away. What I would like to see personally is we have physical education classes in our schools. Well, where's our mental health education? Right? So there should be a mental health class that's mandatory in junior high, 6th or 7th grade, where they teach emotional stability, conflict resolution techniques. We're talking all like how to recognize, how to critically think, how to actually improve our emotional intelligence. And
Hmm.
then again in high school, 10th grade, 11th grade, it should be mandatory again, because those are the skills that our children need. And our world would be a much better place if we could learn how to actually emotionally regulate and know how to actually honestly, healthily talk about mental health.
No question. I'm with you 100%. What's a website, doctor, for more information?
Summitpsychological.net.
Summitpsychological.net. Licensed clinical psychologist and trauma expert, Dr. Stephanie Johnson. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about this morning.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it.